Debbie, I had two people who contacted us last month who missed the opening, and they said, "How come you never ask Debbie about her background? We would be interested." But we do it at the beginning of each show. But let's do it again for everybody. Tell
Okay.
people
My
about your
background.
background.
Okay. Well, I was born on a small farm. Walked uphill both ways to school. I was
No
born and
sense
raised
of
in.
humor.
Yeah, that's right. I was born and raised in New York, and moved to Boston. Started college, left after a year and a half. Decided I had to go back to school and went to Boston. Got a degree in criminal justice at Northeastern University, which I learned there's really no such thing. It's pretty oxymoronic, but that's another contradiction in terms. Came to Florida a long time ago. I thought about becoming an attorney actually when I graduated from undergraduate school, and was accepted in a school up there. I still think about 72 hours before classes started, and I couldn't imagine making it work. I got accepted down here in Florida at Nova, which was the first year, and I didn't know enough about accreditation, wasn't mature enough to even research it, so I didn't go there. Moved to Tampa too long ago because it's still not my favorite place, but and thought about law school a couple of times. In the interim, I did a bunch of things, but the thing I spent most of my time at was I did executive coaching or life coaching or whatever, where people would call and say, I can't figure out what I want to be when I grow up, and we go through that. Or people would call and say, I would hire everybody working for me again if I had to, but Joe and Susan can't talk to each other, and I don't want to fire either one of them. Can you come and help or whatever? Loved it. Asked very hard questions, which I was known for, but you could never give me a wrong answer, which is not true in the law. I mean, you can do things wrong in the law, but in the world of coaching, you really can't do anything wrong. So I loved it. And then kept thinking about law school, and thought about it one time and asked an attorney here in Tampa if I had to take contracts and torts. And he said, yes. I went, well, never mind. I'm not going to law school. Forget about it. And then I thought about it again. And for whatever reason, I didn't find the school I wound up at. I only found a school that would cost me $30,000 a year and let me practice in California, and I wasn't going to California. And then in December of 2008, which is absolutely amazing because that's almost 15 years ago, in the time of prayer, I became a Christian in 1984. And in the time of prayer, when I would ask God, do I keep coaching or do I get a job? The answer I got was go to law school, which, to say the least, was unexpected. And I hyperventilated and, I couldn't imagine it. And then I asked him when, and he said, get ready. Pippa, you having a good morning. And then he said, get ready. And I didn't know what that meant, but I figured I could do it. And so 32 months later, I started law school in August of 2011. And that whole journey was miraculous. Probably everybody listening, watching, whatever, you have had things which, imagine how you'd ever fit it in your schedule, but when it came to be the right time, it was the right time, and then it was a piece of cake. So I started in 2011, I graduated in 2015. I loved it. I forgot how much I loved being in a classroom. It was really glorious. I was, by birth certificate, I was the oldest person in the room, so grades weren't relevant per se. And, I wasn't looking for law review or any of those things. I just went to learn and have fun. And I was very blessed. I passed the bar the first time from July of 2015. And I chose planning and probate and all that because it's just a great way to be of service. Coaching is a great way to be of service. You really help people walk through things that they couldn't imagine have gotten through without just some conversation. And the estate planning is the same. So that's how I came to be it. And so I've been practicing for just over 8 years in terms of got sworn in 8 years ago.
Estate planning is so perfect for you. Your
Thanks.
personality, just your smile, because when it comes down, you're planning for, after you pass away,
Mhm.
You're planning for your kids, your wife, and sometimes it's tough, and you get right in the middle of it.
I get right in the middle of it. It's you know, the paper. I really do hate the paperwork, but the people are so fascinating, and the things they bring. You know, you said your wife and your kids, but you know, you and Sophia have pets. So I mean, you've probably mentioned whether either one of you have children, but you have pets. So and then how do you provide for them? And that's a big concern for people. Like, who's going to take care of my animals after I go? The other thing is, and Florida, not all states do, but Florida allows pet trusts, kind of like Leona Helmsley tried to set up years ago with like $22 million for 2 dogs. Maybe a little bit extravagant, but pet trusts, and that's important to people. And you and I talked about this before. That for me, what I've come to learn is, yes, it's important to have all of those things in place, but not but, and the documents that exist to help you while you're living, like your power of attorney and your healthcare surrogate, are equally essential, um, because things happen. You need somebody to get into a bank account and you haven't given anybody the right, or you need somebody to speak to a doctor and you haven't given anybody the right, and you don't have a spouse, because spouses can, I mean, you may not want your spouse to speak for you, but in the world of the law, if you have a spouse, they can speak. But if you don't, if you're single, you know, I don't, you know, if you and Sophia are not married, unless you've given
No.
each of you a document to speak to the doctors, somebody from your family can come in and say they have no right, and legally they're correct. So it's yeah, and
You
some
know
of the
what? I
conversations are
was
difficult.
thinking about you a couple weeks ago because I too am a believer, and greatest thing that ever happened in my life. Um, I found out that one of the people I serve with
Hmm.
at Calvary Chapel uh, passed away and left all of his real estate to the church.
Well,
And I was thinking about now, from what I understand, the kids are really upset. They're mad. And I'm sure that gets tough when you get in a
yeah,
position like that.
yeah, yeah. It gets tough. Yeah. Um, and if that's what you've done, then that's what you've done. And the idea is that you either told your children that that's what you're going to do, or you certainly haven't appointed them to execute your final wishes. Uh, um, and that's always an issue. But yeah, I mean, I
So
have,
my question to you,
yeah.
Debbie, is how often, I didn't even know I was going to go into this, but how often do you, because I look at you, you're very intelligent, you understand the world. When a new client comes to you and says, I want to leave everything to the church, or whatever it could be, do you ever get involved and say, are you sure this is what you want to do? Let me give you some other ideas. Is that part of your job?
As a counselor, yes. Okay. Um, I've seen it more when people come and say they want to disinherit somebody.
Okay.
Okay. Um,
Mostly the kids. I mean, they're children.
Mostly kids, um, and kids and their kids. It's not only like disinheriting your son, but it's disinheriting any of his progeny, which I think is reasonably extreme, especially if the progeny don't even exist anymore. So don't exist yet, so you don't even know. But the thing I've
Right.
learned is, yes, it's my role to counsel about it. It's also my job as an attorney to be sure that I ask them for some kind of rationale for that, to protect me if somebody comes back and says, you know, my dad disinherited me and I don't know why. And some people have put in their wills, I am disinheriting, you know, my daughter for all the Susans out there, I apologize. I'm disinheriting my daughter Susan for reasons that she understands. So I can ask somebody to give me some information, but I can't force them. But I need to be on record that I've asked. In terms of something like charities, giving property to charities or something like that, I've got one woman now, but she doesn't have any children. She's leaving all of her estate to 3 charities. And she set her home and her vehicles and all her property, but she's got an IRA and she's got some bank accounts, and those are going to people. Those are going to individuals. So the person who left all his real property to the church may have left things beneficiary designated, where family wasn't necessarily cut out, but nobody would know about it because that's just going with a death certificate and the financial institution just writes checks. Does that make sense?
Well, I was thinking about that really has to make your job so tough.
You were thinking what?
I was thinking, can you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that really has to make your position so tough when it gets to afterwards and people not happy with what they thought they were getting and didn't get. So anyway, I thought about you, but I just want to, one of the things with this show, Debbie, is I love when people get to know the expert, not just, education wise. And I just think it's so amazing when you started law school. I mean, you could just continued on with something you love doing, coaching. And then I just think that's incredible how you made that change, because I know there's a lot of people out there that go, I really wanted to go to law school. I really wanted to become a doctor. Right? And they never did it. But you actually did it. I just think that is so amazing what you accomplished.
It's a lot of fun, and it totally was a walk of faith. And people know that they really can't say to me, I'm too old to do that. Excuse me? Like, what? Oh, yeah. Okay, I forgot who I'm talking to. But again, like, anything else, I've thought of things I need to do this week. And Brian Tracy teaches that we pay attention to the things we value most. And that's a great thing to look at if you're busy spending time building a career and you're ignoring your family, but you're telling your family that they're the most important thing to them. So we pay attention to the things we value most. And if a person says, I'm going to go back to school, and they really choose it, like it's clear that this is what they're going to do, my experience, not just for me, but for other people who've done similar things, it just all falls into place. Because your mind instantly drops out all those things you've been doing that are, in the world of Stephen Covey, maybe they're important and you've been treating them as urgent and they're not urgent, and maybe they're not even important anymore. So my life continued just fine. And the people because I went part-time, the people in my part-time class, I think there were 70 when we started. I think actually 66 graduated, which was, really good. Those people, I work for myself. So, you work any 7 days a week or whatever we want, but these are people who had limited time. They had full-time jobs with corporations or in businesses or whatever. And they managed that and law school and their families. And now those are the people that the one who came to law school raising 6 children on her own, not at her choice, 3 of whom were special needs, and graduated in 4.5 years, that's the person to admire, because she was going to get it done. And she did. And I think she passed the bar the 3rd time she took it, and she's practicing, and her kids are thriving. But it was not easy. It was just not easy for her. So I love that people admire me, and I really appreciate it. And it's humbling. And I look at her and I think, there's the woman to admire. But the walk of faith is what made it easy. I mean, it was a walk of faith for me.
Wow.
You know, that, I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't easy for other people or easy, but whatever, easy. It wasn't easy, but it was just the right thing to be doing. So the promise was don't leave anything on the table. And I didn't get to any class or any test or the bar exam or anything else, or even my work here. You know, I'll go back and look and say, have I left anything on the table? And if I haven't left anything on the table, then if anybody doesn't know the expression, it's like, did you do all you could do? Everything you knew to do, did you do it? Did you ask for help? Did you get what you needed? If I've done that, you know, it's just, you know, you just pray that it's well.
I'll ask you, because we've already gotten a couple of people who've just written. Can you explain what a revocable trust is?
Revocable trust is just what it says. It's revocable. So you put money, you put assets into a trust, which is designed to help you avoid probate and then to pass your assets on after you die without it going into the public domain or over time or whatever. But as long as the person who created that trust is alive, they can do anything with it. So right now I've got a friend who created a trust, and she put her home into it, and she put a rental property into it. And she's going to sell the rental property. Well, it's her trust, so there's no problem. You just sell it. There may be a little bit logistically, because it hasn't happened with me before. So logistically, she has to do, but she has all the rights. She can sell that house with impunity. When she dies, that trust becomes irrevocable, which means the trustee, who's ever going to run it after she dies, can't change a thing in it. But revocable just means really what it says. You can add things to it. You can take things out of it. You can sell. You can do anything you want. You can dissolve it. You know, you can do anything you want with it. But that's what the revocable trust is. And it's a vehicle to have assets passed down through generations, and it's designed to avoid probate. It's a private document. Wills become public knowledge. I'd imagine all states want wills to be recorded or filed, or whatever they call it. And then, so if you were looking for somebody if you thought you were supposed to be a beneficiary in somebody's will, and that will had been recorded, you could find that will online or in the public records. A trust, okay. A trust, the will say, if you want information, look to my trust. Oh, by the way, you have no access to it. No, obviously it wouldn't say that, but so that's one of the reasons also people do trusts. Bing Crosby had a trust, you know. So I read this years ago, and one of the reasons nobody ever knew how much he was worth when he died was because he had a trust. So however many millions or he wasn't worth, it all went through the trust, and maybe still be going through the trust. But that's what a revocable. And it's living because it's living. Like I said, you can do anything you can do anything you want with it while you're living.
What about when there's minor children involved?
Well, for minor children,
inheritance.
Well, minor children, they can't inherit money until they're 18, and I think that's federal.
That's a law.
I think that's federal. So the trust comes in then, because if you've got minor children and they can't inherit money, you need somebody to manage that. You know, it's also to look at, would you have trusted yourself with any substantial money when you were 18? And most people would not have. Some people would have. Certainly I would not have. And so that's a way to be sure that you also don't hand an 18-year-old a substantial amount of money without them having some kind of grounding or background or support. You know, it's, you've read about athletes who get big bonuses, and if they don't have financial advisors or they don't have good managers, that money can be gone in a heartbeat because they say they squander it isn't fair, but they use it not necessarily in their best interest. So I really advise trusts when you have minor children, pretty much any age. But right now, my son-in-law and daughter have a trust. I mean, I didn't do it. They've had it for years. And their children now are 32, 31, and close to 30. And I think the ages for distribution, if both parents die, are now 35, 40, and 45. And he's thinking of changing like to 40, 45, and 50. just because he figures, maybe they'll need it more when they're older, and all of them are doing well. And will they be responsible enough? Which they're all pretty responsible, but minor children for sure, absolutely for sure. Protect
At the beginning of the show, before we went on the air, we were all talking, including our great producer, Rebel, and it was about time and how fast time goes by. And it sure has with this show. Sometimes, I think there's more than just being an attorney, Debbie, which is one of the things I love about you. And I love sharing your story with others out there. So it's my fault that we kind of got behind in time. Give everybody your phone number and your website address.
So my phone number is 813-586-1332. And the web is londonbakerlaw.com. Anybody, I said this before. If you have a question, even if you're out of state, I love to help. So I'm always willing to help. With the understanding, if I don't practice in your state, it's just general thinking for you to go ask somebody else questions. But this whole thing, my coaching, this is all about being of service. So if I can be of service, don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to be of help. Oh, and my email address, because it's here, is Deb Baker at London. My email address is Deb Baker at London Baker Law, since it's up here in the chat.
Debbie's with us every month, the last Monday of the month. Debbie, thank you. I could do this for 2-3 hours every day with you. It is so, I love listening to you speak. We'll see you again next month.